Let's do a mini business course, Teresa, on solving problems. So if you had to extract three things that somebody would get from the book that will help them solve a problem today, what would those three things be? And let's start off with number one.
Yeah, so number one is understanding who you're actually solving the problem for. So who's your customer, your user, whether that's a persona or job to be done. And as I mentioned, that really is the biggest struggle for a lot of organizations because for those in the product space, this is something every single day. Every single product and feature, we know who the persona is, we know who we're targeting, we write it in the user stories. But for businesses just getting started, and especially a startup that has no familiarity with really product UX or design, this is a foreign concept. And so oftentimes I introduce both the concept of a user persona and a buyer persona because those could be different. So the person using your product might not be the one buying it. And same forth if you're selling business services. Those might not be the same two individuals. So that's number one. Who is going to get the most value out of the problem that you're going to solve? Number two is really research on what's going on in that space and in the market. So who are competitors in the space? What are other products that exist there? What do you already have today that you could pivot either from something you have or creating a new solution or business? So let's say you're a business coach and currently you're targeting the C-suite and you're wanting to expand that into a different area. Maybe you're wanting to expand that to director levels or more entry level folks, from a business standpoint. So that would really be a new line of business from that standpoint. So that's number two, really understanding and researching the space that you're in, that you're trying to sell into, whether that's a product or a business. And the third is really sketching out and idolizing your ideal solution. So how do you think you're going to be able to solve this problem? And that's where this process becomes really fun because it's not just what you think, it's what everyone that's part of that 2-hour design sprint thinks from a stakeholder standpoint. And oftentimes you have folks that are in executive roles, those that know the customer really well that you're trying to solve for. And for those that don't have that stakeholder group, this is where I'm able to help bring in folks, in that space or utilize third parties to be able to help fill that gap. But ultimately, that's really where the magic happens in understanding what solution options exist.
Yeah. Yeah. Thanks for that breakdown. And I would add to that. That was great. I would add to that. Make sure you don't rush it. Right. Make sure it takes. I mean, you can get a lot done in 2 hours, and I'm a big fan of being decisive. And there's certain things that require decisive decisions, but there's certain things that require a little bit of time and a pause and to think about it. I find sometimes people are maybe trying to make too many decisions all at once, and it's kind of like, hey, let's take one decision at a time. Let's really think about it. Let's be intentional about it, and just don't rush it for the sake of rushing it. And I think finding that perfect cadence is really, really important. Any thoughts on that, Teresa?
Yeah, and I think really what you're touching on, is what are the best types of problems for this process? Where does it work well? Where does it not work well? So, being in the product world, something that doesn't work well is, let's say you're going to do a brand new website migration. You're going to move all kinds of user types to a brand new website. You're not going to solve that in 2 hours. That is very complex. I've done that a few times in my career. And but here's where you have success in problems you're trying to solve. So you have something that you're already aware of that you're trying to move forward on as an organization. New business concepts, pivoting to different markets or client requests. And one of the key components of a 2-hour design sprint is what I've seen is a lot of organizations, really don't have the time. I mean, I've worked in the fintech space, my current organization for the past 6 years. And when I started, we had maybe 4 or 5 key competitors. And today, we're seeing so many competitors in the space, like 40 or 50 that are entered this market. And that really is what you really have to think about is it worth me kind of trying this process to kind of understand a new direction on a solution? or do I wait it out until I can spend more time on it? So
Yeah.
what ends up happening is a lot of organizations or startups just skip that step and they put what they think is the right solution. And then guess what? It fails. And
Yeah.
so that's really the intent here, is to make sure that you're really thinking through what you're trying to solve so that you don't fall on your face when you push something into the market.
Yeah. 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 And I'll just say this, sometimes you launch it and you realize through the messaging, through the feedback, through the this, like when you launched it, it was right. But then X amount of time later, you realize, wait, we're getting feedback. We need to pivot a smidge. We need to do a 1 degree shift and just kind of meet the market to get ahead of real time. So it's there's so many moving parts. I think it's also, you just got to always be real time and ahead of real time with it. This
Right.
is something that is it's a live issue. It doesn't just go away, right? You're always evolving it. I love it.